So for this chapter, for this hyperdoc, we're going to go ahead and combine chapters 12 and 13 um, because what we're really doing is kind of comparing life in the North and life in the South before the start of the Civil War. And in the North, really, that was characterized by industrialization and how industrialization really affected the way that people live their lives now in the northern states. Um, the Industrial Revolution is technically thought to have started in England. And Samuel Slater was a British immigrant who came to the United States after working in the mills in England and kind of learning that system. And even though it was illegal to bring those ideas over, when he came over to the United States, he decided to create his own mill here using that same type of technology. And so in the United States, it's believed that the Industrial Revolution first happened here through Samuel Slater when he created his mill in Pawtucket, Rhode Island in 1793. And his mill, what it did was it took cotton and it took the cotton and they weaved it into these long spindles of yarn that people could then use to be able to make cloth from. But it was all done through machines, right, using water power. His system became known as the Rhode Island system because it was in Rhode Island. And what he did was that he divided this labor of using the machines into very small, simple tasks that a lot of people could work on. And therefore, what he did was he employed entire families. So everybody in the family would have a role in this process. And so he built housing for these families that could live in town right next to the mill. Everybody in the family would work. He also created a company store for these families to be able to buy supplies and their necessities. He created a credit system where they could buy things and pay them off a little at a time. The same concept like a credit card today. You know, you purchase an item and then you pay off the balance of your credit card every month. So that kind of same concept applied. And that was the real start of industrialization in the North, and we began to see this idea spring up in other places. Besides Samuel Slater, there was another innovator, Francis Cabot Lowell, who created another type of factory system. However, instead of just spinning the cotton and weaving it into yarn, it actually then took that yarn and created the actual cloth itself. So it did it all under one roof, and this was known as the Lowell System. And for Lowell, what he did, instead of employing these huge families that were all working in the factory, he decided to focus on kind of young unmarried women who were then be known as the Lowell Girls. They were the ones who were in charge of the whole entire factory system in his mill. And he provided then these Lowell girls the ability to go to school, right? They were paid well. They created boarding houses for them. So they went there when they weren't working. They were able to go to school and take classes. So these Lowell Mill girls, in comparison to other women who usually was uncommon for them to be educated or uncommon for them to have jobs, had a way of getting their own money and going to school and being able to learn different things and have different types of jobs. Now, these Lowell Mill girls, even though they had these opportunities, they still worked about 14-hour days and 6 days a week. So it was a very difficult job. It was very time consuming. It was very wearing on the girls too, because it was very common for these girls to not only through exhaustion, but there'd be injuries. And working with the Lowell Mills, you'd have a lot of injuries, especially with your hands. So it was a very difficult and dangerous types of jobs that they ended up doing. But it was an opportunity for young women who at one time would not be able to kind of advance themselves through education and having their own money to be able to find a little bit of independence. So these two systems, the Lowell system and the Rhode Island system, really is what started industrialization here in the United States. And from there, we'll begin to see a lot of other innovations that are going to influence throughout the North. And we'll see many more factories popping up. Not only just like textile factories that created cloth, but many other different types of factories, right? We'll also see the advancements of like the steam engine and how that affects then factory work. And that'll also affect the way of like the train, right? You will have the railroad based on the steam engine, the locomotive. And so you will also have like a transportation revolution, and that'll aid in moving westward. So this just becomes like a huge kind of snowball effect of how industrialization begins to spread it. And it really affects the culture and the system up in the North, where they're getting a lot of money based off industrialization. people in the North then are really basing their lives on industrialization. Like for the first time, because of industrialization, people are going to start kind of living their life by a clock, right? Before, when you had farming, most people just lived their days and based their days off the sunrise and sunset, right? Because they had to depend their farm work on that. Now we're not depending our lives on that. Now, for the first time, we're actually depending and running our lives by the clock, because the sun really no longer plays a role in life in the North. Um, so this is just kind of a short little kind of summary of how industrialization first starts in the United States. And you'll see as you complete the rest of this hyperdoc how it's going to affect different things throughout the North, and different inventions and innovations that happen in the North because of it.